After being tricked into facilitating a hit against a good man who was set to testify against the mob, a longshoreman faces a moral crossroads and increasing pressure to testify himself in the 1954 drama On the Waterfront, starring Marlon Brando, Eva Marie Saint, Karl Malden, and Rod Steiger. And that's the film we're digging up this week on Movie Bones.
With our boy tonight, Charlie. He ain't himself.
It's just the Joey Doyle thing and how he exaggerates the things. Just too much Marcus of Queensberry. It softens him up.
Listen, kid, I'm a soft touch, too. Ask any rummy on the dock if I ain't good for a fin any time I put the arm on me. But my old lady raised us 10 kids on a stinking watchman's pension. When I was 16, I had to beg for work in the hole. I didn't work my way up out of there for nothing.
Look, I know that, Johnny. I know it.
You know, taking over this local took a little doing. There's some pretty rough fellas in the way. They give me this to remember 'em by. I know what's eating you. Well, I got 2,000 dues-paying members in this local. That's 72,000 a year legitimate. We got the fattest piers and the fattest harbor in the world. Everything moves in and out. We take our cut.
Why shouldn't we? If we can get it, we're entitled to it.
Deal I sweated and bled for, and I got a one lousy little cheese eater, that Doyle bum who thinks he can go squealing to the crime commission, do you? Well, do you?
Well, no, Johnny. I just figured I should have been told.
I make it. Here, kid, here's half a bill. Go get your load on.
No, I'm okay,
Go
Johnny.
on.
Thanks.
Present from your Uncle Johnny.
And that's Lee J. Cobb as the corrupt head of the Longshoremen's Union, Johnny Friendly, giving a talk to longshoreman Terry Malloy, played by Marlon Brando. He's both explaining and justifying the state of affairs after he put a hit on the guy who was going to turn state's evidence on his racket, using Terry as kind of an unwitting lure to make it happen. I noticed something in the clip that when I was putting the show together today, is that in listening to that dialogue more carefully, it's like the two of them, Johnny and Terry, aren't all that different in background, are they? You know?
Yeah, that's a good point.
They both have had really kind of rough childhoods growing up. They've seen the mean streets. It's the difference in their response to it. And that kind of makes all the difference, doesn't it? And it kind of sets up the real drama here.
Yeah, I never even thought about that until you just said it. So yeah, that's a really good point. It gives a little bit more humanity to Lee J. Cobb's character.
Yeah, and Lee J.
Johnny
Cobb
Friendly.
is Johnny Friendly.
Yeah, real quick. Like this man is really good at making you both hate him and also feel something. Like not so much a hate, but feel something.
It's not so far as sympathy, I would say, but go ahead.
Yeah, because, and I say that because, like, you know, the last movie we saw that I remember was 12 Angry Men.
Yes.
And he was just phenomenal in that as well.
Oh yeah, I love him there too. He was great.
So I mean, like, that's why I say he can make you feel something, along with also kind of like, man, I hate this guy, but he might have a point.
And even if he doesn't have what I would call a point, his perspective is still the wrong perspective, clearly. He went through all that kind of rough childhood as he's telling it, and he goes on for quite a while talking about it too. And I think the second listening helped me a lot because there's a lot of accent, like I guess the New York style, or it's kind of that urban accent that a lot of people are using. And it kind of makes things a little bit hard to understand in the first watch. But after listening to it again, it's like he goes in this long spiel about his upbringing. And the way he responded to that was like, I am king of the hill. Is that, you familiar with Hobbes, the philosopher Hobbes?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Life is, brutish and short. Was it? I forget there's another part to that. But yeah, it's like life is just brutal and only the strongest survive. So be one of the ones who survives by being the most brutal and the most domineering. And that's the lesson he took from his rearing. Whereas, Terry, on the other hand, he just kind of rolls with it, which is like what a lot of people do when they're in bad situations. They just kind of like, well, this is the way it is kind of a thing. And it feeds a kind of cynicism, even if they're not like ambitious themselves personally. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I do love that about the characters. It's like that does add some added depth to his character. And so he just doesn't become a stock villain,
One of the reasons why he's menacing is because he's not totally on screen.
Yes.
It's like he's this, if this gets back to him. I mean, we see him And we see him just enough to realize, like, man, this guy really is, the real deal. I kind of wondered, really has nothing to do with the movie, but has everything to do with the movie. This felt like an early mob film. You know what I mean?
I think it was in the 50s. I think I'm trying to put
Well,
a date
what
on
I'm
it.
saying is, like, when did we start getting more mob style films?
Well, there's James Cagney. He was back in the 30s, I think. So,
Yeah.
and he was, James Cagney was known as one of the mobster guys you get to play it kind of stuff. And of course, anything revolving around Prohibition. If you had a story revolving around Prohibition, which, by the way, folks, there is a movie out there. I'm just plugging this. If I ever see this available for free somewhere, we're going to watch it, hopefully. It's A Slight Case of Murder. But as for the movie, it's like, yeah, there's that sense of entitlement that if you manage to rise up above the others, it's because you deserve it and you're entitled to it, But one of the unspoken realities that the film doesn't address directly, but kind of comes close to saying, is that the success we manage to achieve in life doesn't mean anything if it's used only or even primarily to keep ourselves in those valued or overvalued positions. To put your safety and security in those things. It has to be spent outwards for the good of others. And that's kind of what the father Pete is trying to get across to Terry too. And I love that too.
I don't know why I don't really have any much more to add to this, because I think you're being really spot on right now. So I'm just kind of like cool with listening to you talk for a moment.
This is the moment when Ryan joins the audience out there.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, because the film is pretty fresh in my mind. I keep thinking about it. Marlon Brando's character and how he just, to me, he never really felt like he was trying to get ahead.
Right.
And I think that ties into, even though we don't talk about it a lot, or it's not really talked about just a whole bunch, there is that famous scene.
Yeah.
And he's got his head down the whole entire movie. That's really what he's trying to do. And he's kind of, like you're saying, with this whole rising above or, getting ahead and everything, he's forced into that. In some ways, you could say that he kind of follows the hero's journey motif, that forces him into that whole getting ahead. And like by the end of the movie, he becomes a de facto leader of sorts.
Yeah. He doesn't want the job of being a leader. The first person to stick your neck out gets to cut off is basically what's being presented to him.
And we see that multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's threatened a whole lot as well.
And you think about like group dynamics and psychology. The workers themselves don't trust Terry because he's too closely tied. Terry's brother is too closely tied to the management that puts the thumb on them. So they don't trust him. He's an even more unlikely hero because of that. He knows he's not trusted outside of this, small group. And the only reason why they trust him, even grudgingly, is because he doesn't put up much resistance. Although they do, even there, it's like the psychology of it. It's like even the slightest form of hesitation amongst the in-group, in other words, the power group, is seen as a sign of suspicion and a reason to kind of like raise your voice and start to get a little angry and suspicious as this person because is this something not good enough for you? It's like, it almost becomes like his hesitation becomes a judgment on their actions. And I do like that too. It's all these great little social, psychological aspects of the film. I really appreciated that.
K.O. my word that if he stood up to the mob, I'd stand up with him. And now K.O. Dugan is dead. Some people think the crucifixion only took place on Calvary. They better wise up. Taking Joey Doyle's life to stop him from testifying is a crucifixion. And dropping a sling on K.O. Dugan because he was ready to spill his guts tomorrow, that's a crucifixion. And every time the mob puts the crusher on a good man, tries to stop him from doing his duty as a citizen, it's a crucifixion. And anybody who sits around and lets it happen shares the guilt of it just as much as the Roman soldier who pierced the flesh of our Lord to see if he was dead. Go back to your church, Father! Boys, this is my church!
That struck me so powerfully in that scene there.
I loved the priest in this movie.
He does so well what so many Christian movies fail at spectacularly. You know what I'm saying?
That Christ-like figure is written real well. And what I mean by that is, I think sometimes when we think of Christ, we think of like, in a good way. I'm not saying this is a bad way, but like sometimes we think of Christ like characters. We think of these omnipotent characters who are going to win, blah, blah, blah. I'm actually reading your notes right now. I kind of want you to go in what you're talking about on your notes real quick.
Okay, because,
before I keep on.
All right, because, well, I mean, Anna and I have this kind of, just as much as we like really bad movies, we will also sometimes engage in watching really bad Christian films. And there's so many of them out there. It's easier to count the number of ones. It's easier to count the number of ones I can say I was actually pleasantly surprised by than the ones I can say, that's a Christian film in the way that makes you think of a Christian film. And oftentimes they have the pastor character try to give a lecture on someone's situation in life, and it comes completely flat and aloof because you never get the sense that the pastor who's delivering the message has actually spent any time suffering along with his flock. And that's one of the big differences here is that, first of all, the passion's in the performance. First of all, there's a really good actor, portraying him. But then you've got the situation. He's in the bottom of a ship's hull. It's almost like he's in the bowels of hell. He's come down to where these people are at. Just like Christ comes in as Christians. It's like when Christ came out of heaven to be with us, he's like, he deigned to come to us amongst a world full of this garbage and to be with us despite all that. That's what Christianity is essentially in practice about. Is like you have to go out and reach people where they're at if you love them.
That's my issue with like Christian movies, most Christian movies today. And it's not a bad thing to think of, but like when we're talking about the world as is, in a lot of Christian movies, what happens is it's like, oh, everything is good. Everything is like basically perfect now. And even when people do good, we see it in this movie, like, okay, this person did good. This person decided to do good. It doesn't mean that things are just like everything is 100% better. No, it's kind of one of the beautiful things about this scene, or about the end of the movie, is Terry rises up to the occasion, but we're not really given a definitive ending. We're kind of forced to wrestle with, okay, what's going to actually happen next? Yeah, and that's kind of a beautiful thing. And one of the things I say, he's the most Christ-like, not Terry, but the priest. One of the most Christ-like characters I've seen is exactly what you're saying. That he's with the people. Like Christ, he's telling them, he is showing them by walking with them, but he's also telling them, like, this is what you have to do. He's not doing it for them. That's oftentimes, again, in Christian movies, that's what's happening. This beautiful line in the animated Spider-Man movie, the first one, Peter Parker, he's got to go back to his own place, and he doesn't want to. And Miles is the one teaching him, like, you got to do it, man. You got to go. Peter Parker's like, how do I know that I'm not going to go back and fail? And Miles says, you don't. You don't. It's a leap of faith. Or that's what Peter was saying. It's a leap of faith. And that's what this is to me. And it's like, this is what makes it beautiful with the priest. Is the priest is not telling them, like, okay, things are going to be magically better. We don't know what it's going to look like on the other side. No. But we know this: when we're committing to good, good will come. Yeah. At some point or another. And we've got to commit to it, as difficult as it might be, as painful as it might be, as terrifying as it might be. We have to commit to good. And if we do decide to commit to good, then we'll start seeing the change that we want to see. But it begins with that leap of faith. In Christian movies, and I'm not trying to make this a Christian movie knock again, but in Christian movies, it's like, okay, basically a lot of them are like, you know what, I trust God, and then everything just magically gets better. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? The Bible never, ever says that okay, it's just immediately going to get better. It rains on the just, it rains on the unjust, but you still have to have faith. And when you have that faith, you will start seeing the good in the world around you. And that's one of the things I like about the priest in this movie is he's like, we don't know what it's going to look like, but if we commit to it, then things will start to get better. The sense of fraternity that he brings too is the sense that we're in it with each other no matter what happens. That's the important part. It's like the relationship aspect is where God is. That's what the important parts are. And he brings that sense of dignity back.
You take them heaters away from you and you're nothing. You know that?
You talk yourself in the river.
You take the good goods away and the kickbacks and the shakedown cabbage and the pistol arrows and you're nothing. Your guts is all in your wallet and your trigger finger. You know that?
You ratted on us, Terry.
From where you stand, maybe, but I'm standing over here now. I was ratting on myself all them years. I didn't even know it.
The value of not ratting on yourself. I think that's a great way to put it. It's like when you put up with it, when you have an opportunity to do something, you have to live with that, Mm-hmm. And there's a weight to that can't be bought by all the, as he says, all the pocketbook or the gun threats or whatever you're going to do. You can't threaten that and make it better. It's like you can't fix that or heal that. That's still going to be there one way or the other unless you do the right thing. And that's a great aspect of the film. I think it's more of a Christian film than Christian film is, even though it's not a Christian film,
Yeah.
It's a really great film with that. Yeah. If I was to come up with any kind of criticisms of the film, it's going to be somewhat in the technical execution of certain things. And one thing in particular, actually. Do you know what it is?
Not really.
The music. The music itself.
Oh.
It just felt like it was so... And Leonard Bernstein, don't get me wrong, he's a great composer for his time. But Leonard Bernstein's score here is just like a style up to 11. And for me, at least personally speaking, it's like the dialogue and the great acting and the script writing. I was enjoying all of that. It was just that the music would sometimes just turn up to 11. And it's like, I don't need that. Actually, it's actually making me stop being able to focus on the good things you're already doing. So if I was to like pick on one big thing in the movie that it really kind of took away from me, is that, the movie's technical production sometimes doesn't stand up to like the dramatic potential that it was going for. You know what I'm saying?
I can understand what you're saying there. Oh, by the way, I think last week you said something about like, do I know the famous line? I know it now. And you are right. It did come out quite well. There's this famous scene, for those of you who haven't seen it, and spoilers now. So if you want to go on watch it, go and pause this right here and go and watch it. But there's this famous scene, and a lot of people talk about this particular scene. Like, I did not think that this is where this movie is going to come from. But in it, it's talking about, Terry's life. And, one of the things he brings up is that I could have been a contender. We have seen that over and over again in various media throughout.
It's been parodied and parodied and parodied over the years.
Yeah. And now more often than not, it's more dramatized than it was in the movie. Like, I could have been a contender.
Yeah.
It was not a throwaway line. One of the things that I love about this movie is it kind of does something that I've often thought of. It's this idea of like, this overwhelming number, thought. And when it's like there's more of you than there is of me. Or there's more of me than there is of you. Either one of the ways you want to look at that. You have Johnny Friendly and all of his,
his thugs.
Goons.
His
thugs, his goons. They overwhelm Terry. And then, like, you have all of the guys, but they back down at first. And I'm like, do you not realize how many more of you there are than these 5 people? It would be easy. There's this, and this is the crazy thing about this. It reminds me, there's this scene. Have you seen the movie Space Jam?
A long time ago.
At the end of it, they're, the aliens lose and they have like this, their boss, they're like afraid of him. And the Looney Tunes, I think it was Michael Jordan. I think he's like, why are you afraid of him? And this was the truth. They go, because he's bigger than us. But they're all monsters at this point. So they're all huge.
Yeah.
And he's like looking at them like, guys, look at yourselves. And they're like, oh, we're bigger.
Yeah.
That's like, I wasn't thinking about that when I was watching the movie, but it is something that I've seen a lot. It was a good thing that Terry did what he did because he finally like got them to move in that direction of like, there is more of us and we can affect what's going on here and we can overcome this one person who is making our lives
miserable,
bad.
Yeah.
Miserable is because they realize, wait, there is more of us. And that's what, like, by the end of it, you've got Johnny Friendly's trying to stop them. Like, no. But none of them are willing to listen because they just realize that they don't need to listen. He's not the boss, in that sense.
Oh, yeah, because it is that message of like, where is the real power in the world, right? It's like, and there's a lot of people today, especially, and you see a lot of this. I don't even have to tell you folks out there to, where to look for examples of this. If you can't figure out an example of this right now, I don't know what to say. But the idea of might makes right, that threats are the way to make sure, to puff yourself up, to make sure you're the biggest, baddest guy in the block. That's the way to engage the world. Because if you don't do that, you're going to get stepped on. It's going to be, and you just be a sucker or a loser, right?
Yeah.
And that's the way, and going back to the beginning, this is what Johnny Friendly believes, his whole motto. But the movie ends up being a rejection of that because it's about the guy who has been left aside or cast aside. His struggle now becomes their struggle. But finally, when someone sticks their neck out, if you get enough people sticking their neck out, you start to question, why are we putting up with this? It's like, courage is contagious. We've said this before. Courage is contagious, just as, cowardice, it can be contagious.
Mm-hmm.
But someone's got to stand up and make that first move. This is a great movie for that. It's one of the better ones for that, I would say. I'm a big Elia Kazan fan. We've done His Face in the Crowd. We've done, Streetcar Named Desire. Both of them were like A-list stuff for us. I think the only thing that takes this down a notch for me, enjoyment-wise, is the fact that the music was so through the roof sometimes. I almost want to edit the music down or just be able to have a volume switch on the music alone. But I can't have that. So overall, I think it's still a very good movie. This is a trust me for me. What about you?
Oh, 100% Fortune and Glory.
Okay, cool.
All the characters, the way they were portrayed was amazing. It has a little bit of everything. It makes you feel like you're in that world. It also makes you feel that world is real in its own unique way. And just I haven't seen a bad Marlon Brando film yet. And I say that as having watched plenty of Marlon Brando films by now. And I think 4 is a lot when I say that. And I say that as in, I watched, and I've probably seen more than I know of just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But, I've seen Godfather, Streetcar Named Desire, this movie, and then I've also, even though he wasn't very long in there, Superman 1, I've never had, I'm sure he's got a movie that he doesn't do so well in, or a movie that he's in that he's not very good, but as of right now, I'm just
I could steer you in a direction of one if you really wanted to see an example of that. But The Island of Dr. Moreau from the 90s, it also stars Val Kilmer. But yeah, that one was one of his last films, I think, sadly.
Yeah.
But yeah, not a great film. This is Marlon Brando at the height of his powers,
Yeah, and just he's so stinking good at what he does, and it's
It's like sometimes you just see a person and say, that's what they were meant to do. Given another day, I could watch this again and come down as a Fortune and Glory. It is on the line for me. I'm reacting to a part that really irritated me badly, but there's so much. I just take it as credit to the rest of the production that is so good that even the score couldn't ruin it. At this time, we like to remind our listening audience out there that if you're having a good time with Ryan and me dusting off these old movies in search of celluloid treasure, do like, subscribe, comment, and of course, follow us on your podcast purveyor of choice. What do we have for the folks next week, man?
Next week, we have a movie titled Keeper of the Flame. Came out in 1942, starring Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. Tubi says, eager to eulogize a national hero after his death in a car accident, a reporter finds his investigation into the man's life blocked by his own widow.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
By the way, Ryan, do you know I know the Keeper of the Plains, or at least I know where he is. You know where he is?
Where's that? He's
in Wichita. Look it up.
Okay.
The Keeper of the Plains it's a monument in Wichita. It's on the Arkansas River. So, because I am legally contractually obliged to say that because I'm in Kansas, it's called the Arkansas River, but everywhere else it's the Arkansas River. So, anyway, folks, that's all our show for today. Looking forward to seeing you guys next week. And as always, take care and watch these movies.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender.